Treaty banning mining exploration in Antarctica. As pressure grows on world mineral and energy resources, they're calling for more international support to safeguard the region.
Strengthening environmental regulation is especially important as tourism to the Antarctica increases.
On the 1st of December 1959, it was among 12 countries to sign the Antarctic Treaty.
It started off with a few people, and now there's a big crowd at the door trying to get in.
One remaining pristine continent in the world where research was being undertaken into the past, the present and the future. And here we were going to be talking about polluting the bloody place.
Antarctica. Goods without government. In 1820, just 3 days apart, Russia and England discovered a long sought after southern continent, Antarctica. Scientists long suspected that there was an origin to much of the broken off icebergs that drifted northwards from the continent. After Russians discovered it and the British also discovered it, there has been a negotiation over this land and there has never been a permanent government. Today, there is no man's land in Antarctica. The entire continent is governed by the terms of the Antarctic Treaty. The Antarctic Treaty was signed in Washington on the 1st of December 1959 by the 12 countries whose scientists had been active in and around Antarctica. There are claimed areas, but no exclusive or no-go zones of Antarctica. Anyone can make arrangements to go to any part of Antarctica as long as they conduct themselves within the terms of the Antarctic Treaty. No mining, no military bases, no pollution. Outside of these core tenets, Antarctica doesn't have what we think of as a government. Antarctica is not a country. It has no government and no indigenous population. The Antarctic Treaty is a decentralized system of governance with no executive leader. Like Bitcoin, but for governance, the actions of each member are monitored and verified by each member of the treaty. When the treaty was signed, the great balance of power between the USSR and the USA covered a lot of the gaps in the treaty. As we enter into a period of history where Asia and Southern Hemisphere countries are more powerful than ever, 3 very important countries are non-signatories of the treaty. Brazil, India, and China all only hold consulting status to the treaty. These rising powers being excluded from claims to the region in spite of their power or proximity to the continent creates a significant diplomatic imbalance on access to the goods of the region. To break down what Antarctica has to offer and why it could come to conflict, we need to review some basic economics. In economics, goods are items that satisfy human wants and provide utility. For example, to a consumer making a purchase of a satisfying product like an Antarctic toothfish. A common distinction is made between goods which are transferable and services which are not transferable. The types of goods found in any economy, as well as Antarctica's, are as follows. We'll start with club goods. Club goods are goods which can be excluded but are not rivalrous. Excludable means a good for which it is possible to prevent consumers who have not paid for it from having access to it. A good is said to be rivalrous or a rival if its consumption by one consumer prevents simultaneous consumption by other consumers. Tourism is the fastest growing portion of the Antarctic economy, and a club good because the individual countries do not affect the others with their consumption, but they can exclude others from using their version. If you're Chile, you can offer a premium cruise like those offered by Polar Cruises. Nobody can purchase a ticket or step on your ship if you do not wish them to. However, you offering this cruise doesn't mean other countries can offer their own with exactly the same access to the sites you're cruising to. The icebergs don't mind being photographed after all. Historically, the Antarctic economy was first based on early exploration, followed by the commercial development of the whale and seal industries. Since 1958, the largest part of the Antarctic economy has been the production of scientific research involving the region's ozone or climate change. However, in the 1990s, for the first time, the number of tourists exceeded the number of scientists and support staff, which makes tourism the most important part of the Antarctic economy when viewed in terms of number of people, although in dollar terms, the level of science and support expenditures is still much greater. Public goods are non-rivalrous and non-excludable, like the fresh air. This is something that provides a benefit to those in the area, but there is no reasonable way for someone to restrict your access and charge you for the amount you breathe. You breathing the crisp Antarctic air also will not depreciate the air for others on the continent to any notable extent. These are our other non-rivalrous goods and, although supremely important, they are not often the cause for conflict, unlike the next category. The most abstract is a common good, like Antarctica's fishing industry. It's supremely difficult to regulate fishing in this area of the world, and the stocks of fish when consumed are depleted for all others. This depletion is a negative externality for other fishing boats. In economics, an externality is a cost or benefit for a third party who did not agree to it, like whenever one of your peers pollutes the area with a fishing net. A land without a government can't easily defend itself or citizens from these types of externalities. These are rare ecosystems and truly invaluable for research, so many governments have a mutual interest in keeping these negative externalities to a minimum. Generally, this minimization would occur between a government and the corporations acting within its borders of control. In Antarctica, these types of problems fall to organizations funded by the treaty states and other interested bodies. Current regulation on fishing is sustained via the Convention of Antarctic Marine Living Resources. As previously mentioned, the world's scientific organizations act as a decentralized governing body for the region. This body has struggled to combat overfishing of krill and toothfish since its inception in 1980. Fishing is down nearly 80% since CCAMLR started operating, but still over 100,000 tons of krill are fished from these sensitive ecosystems per annum, primarily being extracted by Norway, Korea, Chile, and China. Even without significant pressure from outside countries, these treaties struggle to meet their goals and preserve the ecosystem. This isn't even touching the most contentious of all goods classes. Oil, silver, gold, nickel, titanium, uranium, zinc, and lithium. These are all private goods and have been detected in or around Antarctica. As a private good, every piece mined is gone from the supply, and you can easily restrict others' access to your mine or mined materials. The types of goods nations struggle for, and those without envy those with. Although the existence of mineral deposits in Antarctica is highly probable, the chances of finding them are quite small without a government or business putting an investment in. There are countless wars and economic endeavors that have been motivated by the quest for private goods, even in the last 100 years. The Finnish Soviet was motivated by Stalin's desires for the nickel located at Petsamo. Iraq's invasion of Kuwait started as a gambit to control the oil reserves in the region, and Hitler's Lebensraum plan was an initiative founded on a desire for the private goods of Eastern Europe, most importantly to the future of the South Pacific, Antarctica, and the wider world. China's territorial disputes with Japan and Taiwan in the South China Sea over the Senkaku Islands and Taiwan itself can be viewed as an ongoing effort to dominate oil as well as the world's most advanced semiconductor manufacturers. The Antarctica embargo on private goods located within its territory is a tenuous peace, and much like the peace in the South China Sea, this is primarily maintained by the unchallenged military might of the United States of America and their allies. The main problem with growing the Arctic economy is market distance. Production costs are generally attributable to price differentials across geographically separated regions. It's very difficult to produce mangoes in Canada in the way they are produced in the Philippines. Nearly every single good costs exponentially more to produce or deliver to Antarctica. For researchers stationed on the continent, it's common practice to just completely ignore expiration dates because the food is expired by the time it arrives on the icy shores. Unless you find workers willing to eat expired crackers and Soylent, you're looking at a massive expenditure just in employment costs. Then you have costs to bring the mining equipment to the continent. After these, you would already find yourself out of competitive pricing. Even though many resources are in abundance on the continent, outlets for their use and refinement are also nowhere near the continent. This could change if the temperatures in some areas of Antarctica warm to the point significant permanent structures and settlements become viable. But for the time being, Antarctica just isn't worth the effort for the majority of countries in the world. The big southern hemisphere countries serve to gain from exerting pressure in the area, but in the past, the southern hemisphere countries have been less powerful than the north and have never been close enough to a parity with northern claimants to put the treaty into serious contention. Southern hemisphere countries without claims that are effectively located to overcome market distance could upset the current balance of this area of Earth in the coming decades. The winners in this current equilibrium are scientists and the local wildlife rather than any individual country. The governance of the Arctic requires the participation and contribution of all stakeholders, and all stakeholders are in alignment of what they want Antarctica to be today. With the majority of these goods off the table for extraction, peace and stability in the Arctic provides a significant guarantee for all activities in the region and serves the fundamental interest of all countries.